In this video, we're going to be talking how do we perform operations with integers. So the first thing we're going to talk about is basically adding or putting together integers. First of all, if they have different signs, then you need to subtract your two numbers. Because if you remember when we did it in class with the algebra tiles, basically your different signs are going to cancel each other out. So if you have 5 of positives and 5 negatives, those are going to cancel each other out and create a zero pair. And then you're going to keep the sign of the bigger number because that's what's left. And so again, the reason being is because negatives and positives cancel. Okay, now if your numbers have the same sign, then there's no, and you're putting them together and you're adding them, then there's no canceling that's happening. So you just add them, you keep the sign of both because they have the same sign. And because same signs don't cancel. Okay, so now let's see with examples how we would use this. All right, so whenever I'm doing this, just while I'm getting the hang of it, I like to kind of color code things. So if it's a positive, I'm gonna color it. I'm gonna make a circle around it that's blue, and if it's negative, I'm gonna make a circle around it that is red. Okay, so here my 8 right here is a negative 8, and my 6 is a positive. Notice that I am going to circle the sign that's around it so that I know what's going on. And again, what I'm doing here, since there's no division or multiplication, I'm basically just putting this together. Okay, so I have 8 negatives and 6 positives. So there's different signs and there's some type of canceling that's going on. So I'm going to subtract 8 minus 6, which is 2. And you have more negatives. So your answer in this case is going to be -2 because that's what's going to be left. Okay, so let's try the next one. So in the next one, I have 5 that are positive, and then I have 10 that are negative. I should have taken the red on this one. And so again, some canceling is going to happen because they have different signs. So these 5 positives are going to cancel out 5 of the negatives, and I'm going to be left with -5 because that's what I have most of. All right, and in this case, I have 3 that are negative, and then I have this positive 10. Again, some canceling is going to be taking place because there are different signs. So I'm going to do 10 minus 3, which is 7. And in this case, you had more positives. So this is actually the same thing as if I do 10 minus 3. It's the same thing, it's just reordered. Like if I decided to change the order on this, it would be that problem. And so here I have something that I can probably do in my head, 7 minus 2, which is 5, and again, it's positive. I don't really need to go ahead and do the positives and the negatives, but if you wanted to, right, I would circle this blue, I would circle this negative, red, and so there's different signs, so I would subtract 5, and you're kept with 5 positives. And now here, in this case, right, so in all these cases, I have different signs. In this next example, these are the same exact signs. They're both negative, so I'm going to circle them red. A -4 and a -3. And so if there is no canceling that's going to happen in this case because they're not different signs. Remember, you need a negative and a positive to get a zero pair. In this case, there's no canceling that's going to happen, so I'm just going to put them together, and I'm going to have -7 in total. In this case, I would circle both of these blue, right? I have a +5. Sometimes when the positive comes in the beginning, we don't put the plus in front of it, but we're assuming that it's positive. And then a +2, so here I have just 7. And then, in this case, I have 2 negatives, a -6 and a -3. No canceling's happening. So in total, I have -9. All right, so now let's talk about what if we're multiplying. Or dividing. So the rules for multiplication, they go for division as well. So remember that we learned this really interesting thing that basically if I take anything and I multiply it by a negative, whatever number, it is going to change the sign. So if it was positive, it's going to become negative. If it was negative, it's going to become positive. That's this key feature that multiplying by a negative does. So if I ever wanted to make something an opposite sign, I would just put a -1 on here. Okay, so if you're multiplying a positive by a positive, remember only the negative does this. So it's not going to change anything. This is just going to stay positive. And let me skip down to this one real quick. So negative times a positive here. My number was positive, but I multiplied by a negative, so it's going to change the sign, and it's now going to become a negative number. Because multiplying by a negative changes your partner's sign. All right, negative times a negative. This number was negative, so now it's going to change to a positive. And again, these rules apply to division. So let's go ahead and do a couple of examples. All right, so 4 times 3, it's a positive times a positive. So all I'm going to have here is a positive 7. And I'm going to keep the color coding actually here just so we can see. So again, this is different because I'm not just putting it together. This is a multiplication symbol. So this is different from adding or subtracting. So it's 4 times 7 and you get a positive 7. None of my signs here change. Now here with a -1 times a positive 3, notice I'm multiplying by a negative, so that means I'm going to change the signs here. So this number was a positive. It's going to become now a negative, so -3. In this case, I have a -9 times a -3. So again, multiplying by a negative changes your partner's sign. So instead of a negative, it's going to become a positive, and it's going to become a positive 27 in this case. 10 divided by 10, these are two positive numbers, so I'm just nothing's gonna change, it's gonna stay positive, and we're gonna have a positive 1 in this case because 10 goes into 10 once, right? Here I have a -100 divided by a positive 20. Again, I am dividing I'm dividing a negative, so again, my sign is going to change. So this was a positive, it's going to become a negative. So the answer is going to be -5. Okay, so now in this case, -40 divided by -4, it's pretty much the same thing. My answer is going to become a negative, and it's going to become -10. All right. So that is the end of this video, and I hope that you found this helpful when working with integers, since this is something that's going to come up a lot.